Well guys, it's another day and I've decided that I want to make another test cut, and I want to try and hook up my wet dry vac with the filter on it and see if that'll handle the fine dust from the process of routing these panels. So I got a PVC 1.5 2-inch to 1.5 reducer, and the OD on this, it actually looks like it's almost a perfect fit for this. Doesn't want to go in right now, but that's because I can actually feel this casting was never finished after it was made. There's a really rough, sharp ridge that I could feel there. In other words, I could feel right behind it that the diameter is clearly larger. So I'm just going to use this little hand scraper here and try and see if I can't clean it up enough to get that to go in there. Well, there's enough material on there. I might need more than just a scraping to get this thing cleaned up. Wish I still had this off. Wish I had noticed this when I had this off and I was and I had it on the milling machine. Oh, there we go. Now that's not going to be an airtight seal around there, but when the vac is running, it shouldn't be much of an issue. Oh, son of a gun! There's a big deformation there in this casting. A big blob of something right here. Well, maybe that's by design. Maybe that's a stop to keep this from going in too far. It doesn't really make sense though. Why would you want to stop that? Well, that's good enough. And in this particular vac that I've got over here, this shop vac that I've got over here, this particular rigid model, it's got a smaller hose on it, so it's not the greatest fit. At the beginning here it's loose as heck, but what happens is when it gets in here, there's a ridge which acts as a stop, so that if you were inserting a pipe into here, the pipe can't go in too far. And as luck would have it, this actually fits pretty tight in that ridge. So when I do this, coupled with this, I actually get a pretty decent fit. Alright, I'm still going to wear a dust mask just in case this doesn't work very well. I don't know whether or not the rigid dust shop vac I have there, how small of a particle that filter can handle. Because this MDF dust is really fine stuff. And for hearing protection and full face shield, again. I thought that looked weird. I put the hose on the outlet, just blew all the dust out of that thing. Dummy! Alright, let's try that again. Would help if I brought the panel over. That ain't working. Well, that stinks. I also discovered another problem. Not so much a problem, but something I've got to be very conscious of. When I was backing this panel back out, because I decided to stop the cut, I tilted it down a little bit, and that made this rise up, and that made the cutter take a heavier cut there. So now I've got a kind of an uneven side there, which I'm probably going to take another pass and go a little bit deeper, so I could probably correct that, but I've got to be real careful about that happening on future passes. And some of these panels that I want to make are pretty large, so I'm going to have to set up probably at the very least an outfeed or an infeed roller, or both. And then of course the biggest problem right now is that I still have this dust issue. I guess this this guard just really isn't doing any good because of the fact that I've actually, the way this is set right now, I've got over half of this cutter is not underneath this hood. And I noticed that the pile of dust was actually collecting right here, which is interesting because where was that coming from? Is that coming from a space underneath this casting? Oh, actually, there's a little hole right here from where this slot right here actually exposes a little hole there. You know what? I wonder if I put some tape over those holes, if that would work. You see that red dot right there in the center of the picture? That's where that's actually the cutter. So you can see through that little hole right there. All right, I've blown off the camera again. And I taped off these openings. So I'm going to give it another shot. You know what? I don't like this fitting as well as I wish it did. So I'm going to build this edge up on the outside of this with a couple passes of some tape here. Making that a little bit more airtight will hopefully give me just a little bit more suction power. I guess the other thing I could do is I could build like maybe a plastic shroud or something to go over this. It's an idea. Alright, still not getting enough of the dust out. It's a lot better than my first try with no vac on there, but I can see where the dust is all blown over onto the little workbench behind me that's got the old Atlas lathe on it. So I can definitely see where it's coming out. As I make that cut, it's all shooting out right here, right in this area. I'm still getting dust over here on the backside, even though I taped off that hole, which is interesting. Alright, so now I want to get a better idea of what this finished profile is going to look like. So I can see right there when I bring up the full thickness of the panel up to the cutter right there, that this little cutter right here, which makes the end of the profile, is not even, it's barely touching it. So that's why my profile looks kind of lame right now. But so what I'm going to do is I just unlock the spindle and I'm going to drop it down so that this is making cut. Lock it right there, and I'm going to run the two sides that I already ran through once again, and that'll take the deeper cut and finish the profile, and hopefully that'll look better. Doesn't help that the panels are a little slick as it is, and then with the dust on them they get darn slippery. Alright, so there's the final profile right there, and I could see that I'm actually not going to want it that deep. I'm going to raise the cutter back up just a little bit for my final passes, because I do want this ridge here, because this makes all the difference in the world as far as dressing it up compared to what you saw in my first pass. But what's happening is now this panel is getting very thin down here. Well, you know what? That edge is going to be covered though. So maybe I don't care about that. So I definitely need to set up some in-feed and out-feed rollers maybe, because it doesn't take much of a hiccup to cause a damaging blemish on this thing. Where actually you can't see it unless the light hits just right, but if I pause for a moment during the cut and the panel rocks the slightest bit, what happens is the panel comes up higher, the cutter digs in, and you get a low area, which is right here. There's an area, there's a blemish. Alright, so now I can show you guys what exactly it is that I'm making these panels for. This is my formal dining room, and I did quite a bit of extensive trim work in here to try and make it, you know, more formal, like you would find in many early colonial homes here in New England. And if I could do it all over again, I probably wouldn't have gone so overboard with this, because when you watch these shows on TV today, you know, first off, formal dining rooms just aren't what they're cracked up to be anymore, it seems. People just don't seem to be into having formal dining rooms in their homes. I mean, it is a wasted space in today's world. It seems like people just don't sit down and have formal dinners other than the holidays, which is what we do in here. Kelly! Yeah, you like the smell of that? Anyways, hey. All right. Never mind me talking about that. Let's get to the matter at hand. What's done is done. I've gotten this far with it. I've got to finish it. So what I did was I just basically made a kind of like a framework that's attached to the wall here. Okay. This is out of 3/4 pre-primed pine. And what I did down here is I actually put blocking behind the baseboard before I attached the baseboard. So the baseboard actually sits out. Now, no, you stop that. The baseboard sits out prior to this, and then it's got the cap molding on the baseboard here. So this baseboard and cap molding is pretty much used throughout the entire first floor of the house. And I actually think I did the second floor this way too. Funny that I don't remember that. Anyways, point is, it gives a nice transition here. And then eventually when the finished floor is put down, I'm going to put a 3/4 inch round toe molding here. And the floor will go under it, and then the toe molding goes on. So that's why the toe molding's not on yet. So let's get back to this. All right, if we can get the cat to stop rubbing up against everything. This panel's a little too tall to fit in here, and it's not wide enough. This is just again, this was just a test panel. But what's eventually going to happen is this is going to... Now you stop that. Come here, you. Hey, don't scratch that. Anyways, so this is going to sit in here like this, and then right in here, I'm going to put a little, probably a small 1/4 round molding right here at this edge to transition from this flat to this edge. So unlike a traditional raised panel where this part this actually would be sticking into a groove on the rails and stiles, this panel is basically going to float in here. Okay, and I'm going to prime and paint this, and that ought to do it. So I just got to figure out a better setup to deal with all this damn dust.